Welcome back to part 2 of the films of Paul W. S. Anderson. Time to move on to 1995 and to the man's first box office hit. In the early 1990s, the Mortal Kombat series of games shocked the world of gaming and brought into creation video game age ratings. Lawrence Kasanoff and New Line Cinema acquired the movie rights to the game and released the Mortal Kombat movie in 1995, the same year as the third game in the series. The choice of a director was an odd one. As mentioned before, Anderson's first movie was only ever released in the US on video, and MK was a completely different type of movie from shopping. It was a martial arts fantasy flick with loads of special effects and a far bigger budget than Anderson's prior film. However, Anderson made the most of it, and Mortal Kombat became a massive box office hit, grossing over $150 million worldwide in cinemas, and obviously even more on video and rentals. What's more, the film is still well regarded by fans to this day, and the reason for that is that it stayed faithful to the source material. It's based largely on the first game, but does feature characters and concepts from the second game. The movie is about Liu Kang, a gifted martial artist whose brother is killed by an evil sorcerer known as Shang Tsung. He does this to goad Liu into entering Mortal Kombat, a tournament that will determine the fate of the world. Joining Liu is a vengeful Special Forces soldier, Sonya Blade, out to capture a criminal named Kano who killed her former partner. Also joining him is Johnny Cage, a Hollywood action star who wants to prove that he's not a fake by winning the tournament. They meet the God of Thunder named Raiden, who reveals that Shang Tsung and his champion, Goro, have won 9 Mortal Kombat tournaments. If they win one more, Earth will be fused with their home dimension, the desolate Outworld. Winning the tournament will not be an easy task, as they are faced by opponents with bizarre special abilities, but they befriend Kitana, the adopted daughter of Outworld's Emperor Shao Kahn, who wants to see the Earth's champions succeed. The film looks fantastic with its sets and lighting. The CGI effects, I have to admit, look very dated, but that is about the only bad thing in the movie. The fight choreography in all of the fight scenes is excellent, and this keeps you pumped up. The dialogue is pretty stupid, but has a nice B-flick feel, which is why I don't mind. Despite Mortal Kombat's reputation as a gory fighting game series, the film is actually very gore-free. The most gruesome it gets is when one of Shang Tsung's lackeys is frozen by Sub-Zero and falls to pieces. This was a conscious move to get a PG-13 rating for the film, but the fighting is so good you never miss the lack of gore. And one area where the movie is definitely better than the game is the music. The soundtrack kicks massive ass and gets your adrenaline pumping. Also, the cast all resemble their game counterparts really well, and this is another reason why I think people still really enjoy this film. Liu Kang is played by Hong Kong actor Robin Shou, and this was his first leading role in an American movie. He never dons the iconic headband of his game counterpart, and also Liu didn't grow his hair out until the third game, which sort of makes him out to be a rather poor likeness of his game counterpart. But if you think about it, Liu in the first game was essentially just a rip-off of Bruce Lee, and therefore the filmmakers consciously avoided making him look like the Kung Fu movie icon. In fact, the original Mortal Kombat game was heavily inspired by the Bruce Lee movie Enter the Dragon. So, if you notice certain similarities, it's pretty understandable. Shou and Anderson also became good friends after the production, and Shou would later make a cameo in Anderson's remake of Death Race 2000. However, if you want to see a really funny cameo by Shou, you should check out DOA Dead or Alive. Lyndon Ashby plays Johnny Cage and does a really good job. He's a wise ass and a bit of a dick at first, but extremely enjoyable. Interestingly, this is one of his few movie roles. After Mortal Kombat, his most consistent work was on the small screen in the drama show Melrose Place. Years later, he would appear in the third Resident Evil movie, Extinction, as a cowboy who climbs the Eiffel Tower in Vegas carrying a sniper rifle. Yeah. The late Trevor Goddard plays Kano and is one of the more notable performers in the film. Goddard played the role with his native Australian accent, but in actuality, the character Kano was an American Chinese gangster in the games. After the movie, however, he's been depicted as an Australian, which is interesting since video games tend to ignore their film adaptations. Goro is portrayed by an animatronic puppet, which looks much better than Shiva from the sequel. He just looks and sounds awesome. His voice is provided by the voice acting master himself, Frank Welker. He's also the voice of the Emperor at the end of the film. This ending is definitely in the top 3 of my favorite Paul W. S. Anderson movie finales. Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa is another actor who doesn't really look like his character from the game. Now, even though Shang Tsung has been depicted as a young man pretty much from the second game onward, he's always been depicted as an old man during the events of the first tournament. I've heard though that Anderson loved his audition performance so much that he didn't want to cover his face in tons of makeup just to make him look older than he really is. And I have to concur that Tagawa's hammy acting is one of the high points of the whole film. Talisa Soto plays Kitana, one of the 4 characters in the film that didn't appear officially until the second game. Interestingly, both she and Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa were in the 1989 James Bond movie License to Kill. Tagawa played a Hong Kong undercover agent and Soto was one of the Bond girls. The same movie had a brief appearance by Grandel Butch, who would later go on to play Balrog in the 1994 Street Fighter movie. Think about it, that's Shang Tsung, Kitana, Balrog, and the Wolfman all in the same Bond movie. Scorpion and Sub-Zero are played by stuntmen Chris Casamassa and Francois Petit. In the film, however, Scorpion's voice is supplied, just as in the games, by one of the creators of Mortal Kombat, Ed Boon. The film also has an appearance by Reptile. Technically, he was in the first game, but only as a hidden character. It wasn't until the sequel, Mortal Kombat 2, that he was given an identity and a full backstory. That's another reason why the movie works so well. Kitana, Reptile, Shao Kahn, and Outworld are all concepts that weren't introduced until Mortal Kombat 2, but by combining these story elements to those of the first game, the movie comes out stronger. Jax is also in there, though only in a couple of scenes, and he doesn't get to do a whole lot. The few liberties they took with the source material don't tarnish the original. You still get to see many of the characters' iconic special moves and techniques. The locations where the fights take place aren't accurate recreations of the fighting stages in MK, but strongly evocative of their feeling. The original additions only help to add to the film. For instance, in the games, Liu never had a younger brother, and instead joined the MK tournament voluntarily. But it gives him a personal story arc, which comes to its conclusion at the end of the film. Obviously, Scorpion and Sub-Zero's relationship from the games doesn't get a lot of focus, but for the movie, it's for the best that they're just amongst the bad guys. Anderson has revealed that originally in the script, Sub-Zero and Scorpion were friends, which explains them working together on Shang Tsung's side. However, according to him, this got a negative reception from the test audiences, and that's why they had to add that line for Tsung, where he says that they're slaves under his power. The fight scenes are indeed some of the best things in the movie. The very first one is between Liu and some random Rasta guy. Even though he's not even a character from the game, this fight is an excellent prelude to the action that is to follow. The Scorpion vs. Johnny Cage fight has some of my favorite locations in the film. The Sub-Zero vs. Liu Kang fight is also great, though I think it's a bit stupid that Sub-Zero gets defeated by a bucket of water. The battle with Goro isn't quite that spectacular, but does get the point through. What's kinda dumb about it is the movie introduces a random character called Art Lean. He's in the movie just so we can have someone familiar to the main heroes die in the Goro fight, to up the stakes for when Johnny faces off against him. Most people don't even remember this character's in the film. Art Lean, you are truly the unsung hero of Mortal Kombat. The fight with Liu Kang and Reptile is noted by some as the best of the entire movie, and it certainly is the most intense. Sadly, it sort of overshadows the fight Liu eventually has with Shang Tsung. But their confrontation does have its strong points, even if it's trying to push the idea that Liu is being tested a little too far. Luckily, Tsung goes out in true Mortal Kombat fashion. I've oftentimes pointed out how excellent this movie is in comparison to its god-awful sequel, Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Anderson had nothing to do with the film, and it was instead directed by John R. Leonetti, the director of photography for both the film's predecessor and The Mask of all movies. It's his only feature to date, and I'm not surprised why. What I am surprised about is that previously I assumed that the film only had half the budget of the first film, but as it turns out, the sequel's budget was double that of the first film. That really raises the question, how fucking bad do you have to be at making movies to fuck up a multi-million-dollar movie like that? Even Uwe Boll couldn't fuck up a movie this bad. Just to give an idea of how different the two movies are, Mortal Kombat was in my top 10 favorite video games movies list, while Mortal Kombat Annihilation was number 1 on my bottom 10 of the worst video game movies. So, to sum up, Mortal Kombat is still to this day an extremely entertaining picture in all its silly action movie craziness. It's definitely not the strongest written film in Anderson's filmography, and like I said, the CG effects look outdated, but it's a fun romp and set the standard for video game movies for the next 5 years. I give it a 3.5 out of 5, definitely worth checking out. Next time we'll take a look at Anderson's science fiction phase with the sci-fi horror cult classic Event Horizon.